September 14th, 1942. Stalingrad. The Volga is breathing fog. It rolls off the black water in low, greasy sheets, swallowing the eastern bank, clinging to the hulls of battered ferries nosing toward the city. Engines cough, oars slap. Men crouch shoulder to shoulder, boots soaked, rifles wrapped in rags to keep the metal from freezing skin. Somewhere across the river, German artillery wakes up. A shell lands short. The river jumps. Another screams overhead and detonates inside the city. No flash, just a concussive thud, as if the earth itself has been punched. Brick dust drifts into the fog like ash. The skyline of Stalingrad is no skyline at all now, just broken teeth and smoking gaps. You could almost feel the city tightening around its own bones. Major General Vasily Ivanovich Chuikov stands hunched on the riverbank, collar turned up, eyes narrowed against the smoke. He has been in command of the 62nd Army for less than 3 days. In that time, his headquarters were bombed twice. His communications are erratic. His men are crossing into what most commanders would already call a lost city. Chuikov watches the ferries unload, young faces, old rifles, men stepping into hell without knowing the street names yet. He knows something they don't. This fight will not be decided by maps. It will be decided by stairwells. The Germans call it Rattenkrieg, rat war. They haven't started using the word yet, not officially. For now, Stalingrad is supposed to be a breakthrough. 6th Army under General Friedrich Paulus has orders to seize the city quickly, secure the Volga, and move on. Urban combat is an inconvenience, a delay before the real war resumes. But that assumption is already dying. The Luftwaffe had flattened Stalingrad weeks earlier, turning factories, apartments, and schools into mountains of rubble. The intent was terror. The result is terrain. Perfect terrain for men who are willing to fight inside arm's reach. And far away in Moscow, that reality has already been anticipated. In the early hours of July 28, 1942, nearly 7 weeks before Chuikov takes command, Joseph Stalin signs Order Number 227. It will later be remembered for one line, not one step back. But buried inside the order, beneath the threats, the blocking detachments, the penal battalions, is something else, something quieter, something operational. A directive to abandon elastic retreats, a mandate to hold ground at all costs, and most critically, an emphasis on close combat, on denying the enemy maneuver, on turning every village, every building into a fortress. This is not rhetoric. This is preparation. Across the Red Army, training circulars begin to change tone. Infantry manuals quietly revise their priorities. Emphasis shifts away from sweeping maneuvers and toward assault groups, small units trained for urban fighting, grenade work, submachine guns, knives, and room clearing. Cities are no longer obstacles, they are weapons. Chuikov has read those directives not as theory, but as necessity. On the west bank of the Volga, the city is being eaten alive. German infantry push forward behind armor, advancing street by street. Panzers nose through the ruins, guns firing point blank into factories. Assault engineers blast holes through walls. Flamethrowers hiss. Soviet units fall back, regroup, counterattack. Sometimes the same building changes hands 5 times in a day. At the Mamayev Kurgan, the hill overlooking the city, the ground is so churned by shell fire that grass will not grow for decades. Casualties are staggering. Entire companies disappear between dawn and dusk. And yet, something is happening. The Germans are slowing down. Chuikov issues orders that puzzle even his own officers. He forbids large troop concentrations. He orders his men to stay close to the enemy, not meters, feet, sometimes rooms apart. Cling to the Germans, he tells them, so their artillery cannot hit us without hitting themselves. It sounds insane. It works.
German artillery, their greatest advantage, becomes nearly useless. Luftwaffe pilots can't distinguish friend from foe in the smoke-choked maze. Tanks are blind in narrow streets. Their long-range firepower means nothing when the fight collapses into cellars and corridors. This is not improvisation. This is doctrine applied with desperation. In the ruins of the Red October factory, Lieutenant Yakov Pavlov's platoon receives a simple order: hold an apartment block overlooking a square. They take it, then they dig in. Windows become firing ports, stairwells are mined, walls are knocked through so defenders can move without exposing themselves. Every floor is covered by overlapping fields of fire. The building will later be known as Pavlov's house. The Germans attacked it repeatedly for 58 days. They never take it. A single apartment block ties down an entire German battalion. Multiply that by 1,000. This is what the Directive has become on the ground, not words on paper, but blood and rubble and men learning, painfully, how to turn survival into strategy. Inside Paulus's headquarters, the mood shifts from confidence to concern. Reports stack up. Enemy resistance unexpectedly strong. Heavy casualties in close combat. Buildings must be taken individually, progress measured in meters. German doctrine was built on movement, encirclement, speed, decisive breakthroughs. Stalingrad is a fistfight in a phone booth. The city refuses to fall, and every delay is fatal. Back across the Volga, replacements continue to arrive. They are not trained traditionally. There is no time. Instead, they are given brutal, accelerated instruction: how to clear a room with a grenade, how to listen for footsteps above you, how to kill silently in a stairwell, how to fight in groups of 5 or 6, not 50. Veterans teach them on the riverbank, shouting over shell fire. Some won't survive the crossing, others won't last the day. But the method spreads. The city becomes a classroom, and the lesson is always the same: distance is death. At night, the fighting changes character. Snipers crawl into wreckage and wait for hours. Spotters whisper. Rifles crack once, twice, then silence. German officers become targets. Movement after dark becomes a gamble. One sniper, a former shepherd from the Urals named Vasily Zaitsev, begins to keep score. His presence is felt long before his name is known. German morale erodes, not from defeat, but from constant tension, from never knowing which window is watching, which shadow is armed. This is psychological warfare born from necessity, and it is working. Stalin never set foot in Stalingrad, but his influence is everywhere. In the refusal to retreat, in the punishment for failure, in the grim acceptance that the city itself is expendable, but the river is not. The secret of Order Number 227 is not its brutality. It is its recognition of reality. The Red Army cannot win a maneuver war in 1942, so it changes the rules. By mid-September, German spearheads reach the Volga in several places. From Berlin, it looks like victory. From the ground, it looks like a stalemate. Paulus's men hold narrow corridors to the river under constant fire. Soviet troops cling to pockets of rubble only meters away. Attacks and counterattacks blur into a continuous, grinding struggle. The front line is no longer a line. It is a mosaic, a map drawn in blood. Chuikov understands something Paulus does not. Every day the Germans spend fighting for Stalingrad is a day they are not preparing for winter, a day their flanks stretch thinner, a day Soviet reserves build beyond the horizon. The city's job is not to survive forever, it is to hold long enough. And deep beneath the rubble, beneath the slogans and the myths, that was always the purpose of the order, not one step back. Because every step forward for the Germans leads them deeper into a trap they cannot yet see. As autumn bleeds into winter, the city tightens its grip, And somewhere in the ruins, a new phase of the war is already being born. The night has a sound in Stalingrad. It is not silent. It is not explosions. It is breathing. Men breathing through broken teeth, through split lips, through cloth masks pulled tight against brick dust and rot. Somewhere in the darkness, water drips from a shattered pipe. Rats skitter over shell casings. A flare rises, burns white for 3 seconds, then dies, leaving behind after images and panic. You can't tell where the enemy is anymore. That's the point. By early October 1942, the fighting had compressed itself into something almost prehistoric. This is no longer a battle of armies. It is a collision of nervous systems. German squads advance 10 meters and lose half their men. Soviet counterattacks come from places that didn't exist on yesterday's maps. Holes blasted through basements, tunnels dug beneath collapsed tram lines, sewer entrances memorized like escape routes. The city has been hollowed out, and the Red Army knows every cavity. At 62nd Army Headquarters, now relocated to a dugout carved into the riverbank, Chukov pins a hand-drawn map to the wall. It barely resembles Stalingrad anymore. Streets are crossed out, landmarks erased. Instead, buildings are numbered, rubble piles marked like hills. Cellars are given code names. This is not urban warfare as taught in academies. This is anatomy. And every new unit arriving across the Volga is taught the same lesson before they even reach the front. You will not fight the Germans at range. You will smell them first. The Germans begin adapting, but too slowly. Assault pioneers are reorganized. Infantry moves in smaller groups. Flamethrowers are issued in greater numbers. But every adaptation is reactive, every lesson paid for in blood. German submachine guns jam with debris. Radios fail inside concrete carcasses. Tank commanders lose orientation, unable to tell north from south when every building looks identical, destroyed. A Panzer IV turns a corner near the Barakati factory and runs straight into a Soviet anti-tank team, hiding behind a fallen smokestack. 2 men, 1 PTRD rifle, 1 shot at 15 meters. The tank burns for hours. Its wreck becomes another fortress. This is where the forgotten directive reveals its full weight. The Soviet emphasis on storm groups, small, aggressive units trained for close assault, begins to dominate the fight. Each group is improvised but consistent in structure. A submachine gunner, a grenadier, a rifleman, sometimes a sapper. They do not advance in lines. They infiltrate. Through holes blasted by yesterday's shelling, through walls punched open with sledgehammers, through the floors collapsed intentionally so men could drop down behind German positions. The battlefield becomes vertical. Up is danger. Down is worse. Inside the tractor factory, production has stopped, but the fighting has not. German infantry storm assembly halls where half-finished tanks sit frozen in place, their turrets never mounted. Soviet defenders move between them like ghosts. Shots echo. Steel rings. In one corner of the factory, a machine gun crew fires from behind a lathe, still bolted to the floor. Nearby, a banner reading, "Death to the German invaders," hangs crooked, riddled with holes. At one point, Germans and Soviets occupy opposite ends of the same production line, firing at each other over conveyor belts. This is not a metaphor. This is the war now. Paulus sends increasingly desperate messages up the chain. The enemy fights fanatically. Loss is heavy. Urban combat is consuming strength at an unacceptable rate. He requests permission to pull back, regroup, and encircle the city properly. The answer from Hitler is unequivocal. Stalingrad must be taken. Stalingrad bears the enemy leader's name. Its fall will be symbolic. Paulus reads the reply twice, then folds it carefully and puts it away. The trap tightens. Meanwhile, the Volga crossing becomes a ritual of terror. German artillery ranges the river relentlessly. Barges explode midstream, bodies vanish beneath the current. Survivors reach the west bank, soaked, shaking, and immediately move forward. There is no rear area anymore. The wounded are evacuated at night, if at all. One soldier writes later, "We crossed the Volga alive, but we were already dead." And still they come, because retreat is no longer an option, politically, militarily, psychologically. The order has done its work. Snipers now dominate entire districts. Zaitsev's reputation grows, though the exact numbers are secondary to the effect. German officers stop standing upright. Movement becomes crouched, hesitant. Initiative drains away. German counter-snipers are flown in, experts from Sevastopol, veterans of earlier campaigns. A duel begins, stretching over days, then weeks. Every shot matters. Every miss reveals a position. This is warfare distilled to patience and nerve, and it further immobilizes the attackers. By late October, winter announces itself. Snow dusts the ruins, softening edges, muffling sound. Smoke hangs heavier in cold air. Weapons freeze, fingers stiffen, wounds fester. The Germans are still advancing, on paper. In reality, they are exhausted. Their supply lines stretch hundreds of kilometers back through the exposed steppe. Romanian and Italian units guard the flanks, under-equipped, under strength, watching the horizon nervously. The city has done its job. It has bought time. In the rubble near the Volga, Chuikov receives intelligence summaries from across the river. New formations assembling, armor concentrations are growing, artillery is being stockpiled. He does not ask questions.
He knows what this means. Stalingrad is no longer just a defensive battle. It is the anvil. On November 11th, the Germans launched their final major assault. Everything they have left is thrown into the city. Airstrikes, artillery barrages, infantry attacks that last for hours without pause. They seize parts of the Red October factory. They push Soviet defenders back to within a few hundred meters of the Volga. At one point, Chuikov's command post is under direct fire. It is close. So close that some German officers believe victory is hours away. But they are fighting shadows now. Men who have learned how to survive in hell. Men who do not need orders anymore, only targets. When the assault finally stalls, it does not end with a collapse. It ends with exhaustion. German units dig in among the ruins they have taken, too depleted to push further. Soviet units cling to scraps of ground that should not be defensible, but are. Both sides bleed into the snow. And then, on November 19th, the ground beyond the city erupts, not with bombs, but with movement. Far to the north and south, Soviet artillery opens fire in unison, thousands of guns. Operation Uranus has begun. And as Paulus's Sixth Army fights for cellars and stairwells inside Stalingrad, the world outside the city shifts violently against them. The forgotten Directive has done more than shape a battle. It has shaped the moment. Because while the Germans stare into the ruins, convinced the fight is here, the real blow is already falling behind them.